Do you believe, based on your decade of serving in the U.S. government on this question, that the U.S. government has in its possession any material from one of these aircrafts?
I do, yes.
You think the U.S. government has debris from a UFO in its possession right now?
Unfortunately, Tucker, I really have to be careful of my NDA. I really can't go into a lot of more detail than that.
Okay.
But simply put, yes.
Well, for many, many decades, the U.S. government has dismissed out-of-hand UFO sightings as crank stuff, things that lunatics babble about. Now, suddenly, they're taking a different approach. They are telling the truth. They're finally admitting that UFO sightings are, in fact, routine, and the government is now being systematic in investigating the question of UFOs. A new History Channel documentary called Unidentified will explore the military's many recent encounters with unidentified aircraft.
The object the Navy pilot is tracking suddenly seems to get bigger. The object then appears to accelerate rapidly, disappearing off screen.
That's a significant rate of acceleration in a horizontal plane off to the left. That's very fast.
The object appears to perform a similar maneuver to what the pilots witnessed. Instantaneous acceleration at this rate would produce a force of gravity, or G-force, so extreme it would crush a human being.
Luis Elizondo is a former military intelligence official and special agent in charge. He joins us tonight. Luis, thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker, for having me.
So the military's decided to stop lying about this. I guess the first question is, why did they lie for so many years about what they knew?
I think that's a fair question, Tucker. I think there could be multiple answers. I think, first and foremost, let's look at the obvious. We didn't have quite the technology for decades that we do now. We now have the technology on some of the most sophisticated weapon systems that give us the fidelity that we need to better ascertain what these things are. Another answer could possibly be, frankly, stigma and taboo, and that this is a topic that is fraught with these landmines, potential, if you will, proverbial landmines.
Yeah, I mean, we sent a man to the moon 50 years ago, so we've had technology for a while, and in fact, it's been more than 60 years since right after the Second World War that the U.S. military has been downplaying these reports. So over the course of that time, some of the smartest, most dedicated people in our country watching these unexplained aerial phenomenon, they must have gathered quite a bit of information about UFOs. What have they learned, do you think, in all these decades?
Well, Tucker, I can only answer from the time that I was with ATIP for about 10 years when I was part of that program. And we learned a lot. I think probably the most significant, if you will, results of the program were 5 observables. And you've already mentioned a few of them on your show, and that's instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocities, a bit of an oxymoron, but low observability, transmedium travel, and last but not least, positive lift, or in the vernacular, anti-gravity.
So, I mean, there have been enough sightings over a long enough period that the idea that this is a computer glitch or that these are generated somehow by radar systems, that can't be right, correct?
Tucker, we are well beyond right now establishing whether or not these things exist. It is an absolute fact. They are there. Now, what they are, where they're from, who's behind the wheel, we simply don't know. I mean, is it possible these things are a foreign adversarial technology that somehow was developed in secret and we're just now trying to figure these things out? It's possible, but there's also other possibilities as well of what these things could be.
Right. So that would be the terrestrial explanation. Just assign off the top of your head a likelihood of that being the case, that these are Russian or Chinese.
Boy. Tucker, you don't want me to give my opinion. The one thing I learned in intelligence, there's a lot. You can be absolutely sure of something and be absolutely wrong.
Of course,
so
it's happened to me many times. But it sounds. I guess just to sort of put a bow on it,
I think it's a low probability. I think
that's it. Okay,
it's a very low probability. Look, we have the most sophisticated weapon systems right now on the face of the planet, and we can identify not only a 737 or a MiG-25 or a F-22. We can tell you even what airline it is, and the difference between the models of aircraft within that type of aircraft. So I think it's highly unlikely that a foreign adversary was successful in developing something like this.
So let me ask you one last question. Do you believe, based on your decade of serving in the U.S. government on this question, that the U.S. government has in its possession any material from one of these aircrafts?
I do, yes.
You think the U.S. government has debris from a UFO in its possession right now?
Unfortunately, Tucker, I really have to be careful of my NDA. I really can't go into a lot of more detail than that.
Okay.
But simply put, yes.
All right. Well, we have a lot more to find out. And I'm glad, very glad that you came on our show tonight. And hope
Thank
you'll come
you for
back.
having me.